All right, folks, welcome to Jira Service Management Fundamentals here with Expium. My name is Connor McNeil. I'm a consultant, senior technical consultant here, and I'm going to be walking you guys through Jira Service Management today, what its kind of key core functionalities are, some of its strengths, and then a little bit about the project administration side and some of the administration settings you can use to set it up. We do have a more in-depth webinar that talks more about the ITSM functionality, your service management, change management, and incident management. That one is September 16th. So I highly recommend you join up for that. I'll talk a little bit more about what's included in that later on. But let's go ahead and get started here. So like I said, this is the Jira Service Management Fundamentals webinar. The goal today is to talk through what Jira Service Management is and look at some of the features, some of the screens, your portal, SLAs, request types, things like that that are relevant to folks kind of evaluating the product, and just talk about some of the basics. The Jira Service Management as a tool is basically, if you're familiar with Jira, which is Atlassian's task management offering, Jira is basically a workflow engine on top of a database. Well, Jira Service Management is just another type of Jira project that also includes the ability to support and track customer requests, connect to internal and external databases, track SLAs, and then a lot of additional prioritization tools, as well as managing, customer requests. And then you get this great portal, which we'll talk about here in a second, as well as the ability to add in some additional automation beyond the normal Jira automation kind of specific to managing customer requests, right? Because the goal of Jira Service Management is to provide a service tool to help you support your customers. And so that's what we're going to talk about kind of today. Recently, Atlassian has released some new features for Jira Service Management and rolled in some new tools. First being incident management by Opsgenie. So many of you guys might know Opsgenie is a standalone alerting tool. Atlassian has now rolled that into a native integration in Jira Service Management. And so that's going to be, that's available now. And we talk more about that again in that September 16th. Also in that September 16th webinar is change management capabilities connecting to CI/CD integrations like Bitbucket and Bitbucket pipelines. All of that is also rolled in as native integration. And then Insight asset management integration, which is the biggest one and another one that we talk about next week in that Jira Service Management ITSM webinar. So same place you signed up for this webinar. Highly recommend jumping onto that one if you want to see more in-depth examples. And Brian will be going through kind of a walkthrough of each of those, basically your incident management, change management, and service management, sorry. All right, so a little bit about us at Expium here. We are a platinum solutions partner with Atlassian, and what that means is we do a series of, we provide a series of services, first being training, where we provide a lot of in-depth training that's kind of our strong suit, things like this webinar, but also further beyond that, we do what's called a Jira Bootcamp, which is a 3-day, deep dive into Jira, where we set you up to learn to be a Jira admin. We do Confluence training as well as Jira Service Management specific training. And then we also do user academies, which are more geared toward the folks that are actually using the product on the outside. Next, we do licensing. So as an Atlassian partner, we are able to facilitate all customer licensing. That means, co-terming. If you've got licenses that are on different schedules, we can get them all into a single invoice. Roles like that, it's a no-cost service that we provide. And we're a platinum solutions partner, which enable us to get discounts on most new licenses, things like that. So please feel free to reach out if that's something that would be helpful to you. Next is consulting. I am a consultant, one of the technical consultants. We go out and we do implementations for large or small organizations, all kinds of products across the suite of Atlassian products. And then solutions. We do create custom-built solutions and applications. Our parent company is a full-stack software development company, so that helps us leverage those resources to build out custom front ends for Atlassian products. So if any of that's of interest to you, please feel free to reach out to us. And without further ado, let's jump into the tool. So first place I want to start. Oh, and if you are interested in the webinar next week, if you go to our website, expium.com, under events, you'll see this week's webinar as well as next week's webinar, which is the Jira Service Management for ITSM webinar. So please feel free to jump in on that. You'll see a couple other events like the Jira Bootcamp upcoming. It's a public bootcamp, some governance webinars, things like that. A lot of neat stuff. Please feel free to look into that. So, all right. So where we are going to start today is out where the customer starts. And so the most recognizable, most important feature of Jira Service Management is the portal, the customer portal. This is where we service customers. We give them a place to submit tickets, make requests, ask questions of various teams, and we track and manage those customer requests right here in the portal. And so the first portal we're going to talk about is what most people think of as the most common case, which is the IT service desk or the IT portal. So we'll go ahead and jump in here. Within a given portal, you can have a lot of different requests, especially for IT. Everything from technical problems to login problems to accounts on various products to application support to your actual infrastructure, service and infrastructure support. So we like to split these down into what's called a portal group. And within each of these groups, you can expand them and see all the requests underneath that group. So in this one, we've got simply called computers, and it covers everything from requesting a new laptop to new hardware to new mobile devices, reporting broken hardware, or just general get IT help. We also have a section called logins and accounts. This is more for, do you need your password reset? Do you need to request upgraded access to a software? Do you need to set up a new VPN? Do you need to bring somebody on board? Maybe you're onboarding a new employee or setting up a new account, a new system. And then we've got our application support, requesting new software, report a system problem, which would be more like an incident, and then requesting a change. And then same down here in service infrastructure, report a problem, report broken hardware, or request a change. And you'll notice some of these requests are in multiple groups. So that's something to keep in mind, is that just because you've got these groups doesn't mean a request can only go in one or the other. You can actually put them in multiple. And we'll look a little bit more at that screen later on when we look at the project admin side of the world. Right now we're out on the customer side. So let's go ahead and jump into logins and account. I'll go ahead and submit a ticket. So I'll fix an account problem. I'm just going to say need password reset for email, we'll say. A couple things you'll notice as I'm typing, there's some suggested articles popping up, and neither of these are relevant to what I'm suggesting, so I wouldn't click on either of them, but these are knowledge-based articles over in Confluence, and there's a native integration that automatically starts searching keywords and popping up the most likely ones. Well, we don't have any article for password resets in there, so it's not finding a good article. However, what we would do as an agent is we go out and create one, and that way we've got something relevant. Anyway, we'll talk more about that integration later on. So please reset my email password. Just leave it at that. And then as a customer, we can add an attachment. We could share this with our organization so that other people can see it, or we can keep it quote unquote private so that other customers aren't seeing our submitted tickets, especially if there's a link shared on here, things like that. You wouldn't want folks necessarily seeing those. Now, once we've created a ticket, we're looking out here at the customer side. We've got the various options as a customer. One, we can add a comment to give further information or start kind of a dialogue with our agent that's going to be working with us. Two, over here on the right, we can see what status the ticket is currently in. Right now, it's just waiting for support. Below that, we can see, we can turn on and off notifications, which means we'll stop getting emails for this particular ticket. We can escalate the ticket if you so choose to give all of this is configured, custom configured. So you can give or take away the ability to escalate the ticket. You can allow the customer to go ahead and resolve the issue if they fix it themselves or it gets fixed and they're quicker to go to this button. That's great. Or the ability to cancel a request. So suddenly their password works and they forgot they had it typed in wrong or something like that. They could cancel the request. And the really nice thing about that is it immediately pulls it off your queue as an agent. It's no longer on your list. So we recommend giving a couple of these transition options to customers because it helps, clean up your requests because they can actually cancel or resolve tickets themselves. Below that, we can see the type of request that was submitted here, and then they can share it with other customers. So let's say they submit a ticket about a problem with a specific product. They could share it with their team here, and their team could track the ticket at the same time as them. That way you don't get 5, 6, 7 of the same ticket submitted in just a couple minute span with everybody going, oh, I can't get in. So you get 10 people submitting the same ticket. So this is a good way to just share with their whole team. Up here in the top right, we can see all of our past requests or any requests that we can see. So I can see all the tickets created by me in the past, the different service desks they were submitted in, as well as, you know, the type of requests and what was requested, things like that. And then we can also see any tickets that are awaiting approval. So like this laptop request that was submitted is sitting here waiting for an approval. And I can go ahead and, as a customer, even if I don't have a Jira Service Management license, I can approve tickets out here in the portal. This is a really great way to reduce license count and not pay for an agent license for managers who need to approve tickets. It can all be done out here on the portal. And so I could click approve on this guy, and now it's going to, you'll notice it transitions in the workflow and goes back to waiting for support because it's been approved. And now this new model new laptop request can move forward. And now my approvals have gone down by 1. So there's just some great interface out here. Of course, we have the ability to sort these and all that jazz. So just some very useful functionality out here. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into that ticket we just created, password reset ticket. And then the next thing we can do is this is kind of the customer interface. At this point, this is usually the extent to which the customer is going to interface with the product. They're going to add, you know, there'll be some dialogue. Maybe the agent will have to ask them some questions, and that activity will begin to be added here. So I can add, you know, any progress, just submit a little question there, and it'll begin to track that dialogue here in this activity section. The next thing we're going to do is look at this ticket from the agent side. So this is the customer side. This is the portal view. Now we're going to jump over to the agent view. And if you have agent privileges, you can actually come up here to this issue key up here in the breadcrumbs and click directly into it. And now we are in the agent side viewing this same ticket. And you'll notice there's a lot more information. We've got our standard, you know, all the information that was in the original request right here is pretty basic. Down below, we've got our activity. You'll see that comment from the customer right here. But over here on the right, we've actually got, not only do we have the ability to do some transitions and move this thing through a workflow, you'll also see our SLAs have started ticking away, right? So first is time to first response. As an agent, I haven't responded yet. So now my SLA is starting to run. And then we also have a time to resolution SLA, which in this case is 8 hours. Below that, we can set an assignee. I'm going to go ahead and assign this one to myself as the agent. We can see who reported it. We can see what type of request. And we can see the priority. So maybe I want to bump this one up to high priority. Maybe the user is a particularly critical user, somebody that manages a couple of very high profile systems, something like that. And we want to make sure that they're you know, they have what they need, so to speak. We have the ability to jump down here and see some potentially related articles, knowledge-based articles. So maybe there's an article in here. If there was, maybe there's an article about password reset that we can just go ahead and send them. The beauty of this is if you have pre-existing articles, there's this great little share as comment button. You can click that and it'll automatically dump that into a comment here with a link. And you can send that and say, have you read this article? And you could send that out to the customer and have them just click on it. And if it helps them, they say, hey, that worked, great, thank you. And that's it, right? So if you're one of the biggest recommendations we make to strengthen your service management portal is to have a strong knowledge base. It's huge to have knowledge-based articles that are useful, accurate. You want to maintain accuracy on your articles and be comprehensive with it. Cover if you can, have an article for every request type, at least something that's relevant or could be relevant to every request type. And then, you know, obviously more than that, but just as a bare minimum, try to have something that would at least give some people some guidance on every request type. So I can go ahead and reply to customer and I can say, we are working on it, you know, and this will get transitioned out to the portal. And now if I look at it from the customer side, we'll see this dialogue has begun between, well, myself and myself. But the agent and the customer, we begin to have that nice dialogue that's now tracked here, and you can go back and review this at any time. So, cool. So then, a couple other fields we have some down here. We've got some asset management fields. These are from Insight. We do have an attached Insight instance that's pretty comprehensive with a lot of devices, which again, Brian will talk about a lot more next week, next Thursday. But there's just too much to pack all of that into a single webinar. But he'll go over incident management, service management, and change management comprehensively, and so you guys really enjoy that. Cool. So this is what that looks like on the agent side. We've got the ability to go ahead and transition this guy. We can move it to in progress. Like, okay, we're working on this thing. It's assigned to me. I would have added a comment there. We are working on a comment there. So now it's in progress. And then we could actually say, okay, it's complete. Maybe we'll go put it in pending. Maybe we're waiting on somebody else, and we'll say, okay, it's being blocked by such and such an issue. There's a lot of options that we can configure, and this all comes down to how we build out our workflow. Like I talked about earlier, Jira is a workflow engine on top of a database. And so this is the workflow for this particular ticket. We've got basically comes into waiting for support. It can bounce back and forth between waiting support and waiting for customer. And then it can get escalated if the customer so chooses. But also it'll go into in progress when we're actually making progress on it or working on it. We do have a pending status in case we get stalled out or we're waiting on somebody else or another team to complete a ticket. And then we can go ahead and resolve this ticket when we're done. And so in this case, we'll go ahead and resolve this issue. And we'll say, resolution is done. It's not blocked, but we'll press run on customer. This should, can't type, save my life, should be fixed. Please confirm, something like that. We'll go ahead and resolve this issue. And so if we look at it out in the portal, the status will have updated to resolved. And then if the customer responds with, looks great, thanks. A little back and forth here. Save. Now if we're back here, once it's resolved, Jira kind of considers it done, but it's not in the closed status, right? So we typically recommend a two-step close, which means first you go to resolve, like this thing is fixed, but the ticket's not closed out until we go ahead and hit this close transition. And now it's closed, and now it's completely out of our, recently resolved queues or anything like that. It's completely closed out. You'll see our time to first response SLAs are done, and then the time to close after resolution is also done. So there's a 24-hour close after resolution timer as well. So all those are closed out. We met all of our SLAs. This ticket was successful, right? So that's kind of the end-to-end process of a pretty simple ticket. And this is kind of this is the agent side and how we would manipulate that ticket. The next thing I want to talk about is, and usually the most important thing for teams is queues, right? How our tickets show up for us and how we prioritize them. So at the top level here in this IT service desk, we've got a template that's using, we've got a service request section, an incident section, problems, and changes. But if we just go to the top level queues, we can just see all open tickets at first. And so we've got a lot of tickets that have come in here over the time we've been doing this. We'll go ahead and flip this upside down here so we got the short SLAs first. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and sort by this guy. So you'll notice we can sort by any of these columns, and we can also bring in any other columns we want. But this is going to give us basically a pre-filtered queue we can build out, and we can build out as many queues as we want. This particular one is going to show all the open tickets. That's anything that's not resolved already. And then it's going to show over on the right, we'll see our SLAs. Most people, I would say, sort by the time to resolution SLA in their all open queue. And so this one, obviously, this is our demo instance, so it's got a lot of old data because we do demos a lot in here. But you'd want to look at the SLAs that are going to expire first and hit those tickets and get those tickets done first, right? Typically. And so we can have you can even have an SLA expiring. There's an SLA tracking all tickets right here, which is focused on SLAs, stuff like that. So we can prioritize and set these queues up to be anything you want. And so Jira is, each ticket is a collection of fields. And the beauty of these queues is that we can actually filter by any custom field or system field in the entire instance. And so if you wanted to sort by assignee, we could sort by assignee. I can see, okay, what's all the stuff assigned to, see everybody in order. If you want to sort by reporter, you could do that. Brian submitted a lot of tickets. I've submitted a bunch of tickets. Elizabeth, people like that. So you can sort by whatever you want. You can sort by like different request types, by key. You can see basically this will give you the earliest created ticket. And anything you want. And then on top of that, you can actually create filters, custom filters for each of these queues. So for this queue, it's just filtered by, resolution is unresolved and order by time to resolution, right? That's going to be that time to resolution SLA. So that's going to be your filter, but you can add any fields in there to filter this queue. So keep that in mind, that building out healthy queues is the most important piece of any service desk. If you're going to be managing it from the agent side, it's the most important piece. Obviously, the portal is very important to customers, but for your agents, the folks that are actually going to be working in this every single day, you want to make sure their queues are helpful and that the filters that their queues are using are accurate. And so that's usually a two-part task. One, to make sure the queue is good, but two, to make sure the workflow supports the queue and vice versa. So if you have all open tickets, but your queue filters out a status that is an open status, that's a case of your workflow not supporting the queue. And so make sure that they reflect each other and that you think through your queues really well and get grassroots input into creating your queues as well. Cool. And so that's going to be our all open queues. We've got various others like service requests. We can cut this down to specifically, service request tickets. We could look at incidents specifically, and we've got open incidents, and we've got like recently resolved incidents, things like that. Now, we don't have any incidents, but we do have some past major incidents that were submitted and created from OpsGenie that were assigned to various, like the IT Ops team. The website went down, seemed to be a system problem, Bitbucket connection went down, stuff like that. And we can look at our past major incidents for retrospectives or past learning and things like that. Series of problem tickets. We've got one open problem where service is repeatedly failing, stuff like that. And all this gets tracked into various sections. You can have different teams assigned to different sections, different queues. And we got, of course, our open changes and then all of our closed changes. These are all deployments and commits from the CI/CD program, and repository. So yeah, so there's a lot going on here. Oh, one thing I did want to mention is as you guys have questions, please feel free to click on that little Q&A button at the bottom of the call and submit questions, and we'll cover those at the end. I like to leave about 15 minutes for questions at the end, so we'll try to cover all of those at the end there. And so as you see stuff, please really go ahead and put a question in, and I can come back to it once we get there at the end of the webinar. So yeah, cool. All right, so that's going to be our our big main things are the portal and queues. Now I want to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty of your service desk. And the next thing I want to talk about is SLAs. I talked about it briefly. And for those of you that may not know what an SLA is, it's a service level agreement, which is basically the level of service your team is committing to providing. And so what that usually looks like is a goal, right? Which in this case is to resolve the ticket. And you're basically saying we are committing to meeting this goal within a certain amount of time. And so in this particular project, and to get to SLAs in a service management project, we go over here on the left sidebar and we go down to project settings. And you have to be a project admin minimum to be able to view SLAs, just FYI. And so we go down to this SLAs section. And so in here, we've got 4 SLAs right now. We've got time to resolution. We've got time to first response. We've got time to close after it's resolved. And then we have time to review a normal change. So the first one we talk about is time to first response. That's the first one that happens. So a ticket comes into the portal, and the first thing you do is, okay, we have committed to responding to this ticket in a certain amount of time. So we'll go and pop this open. And so you got your conditions, which are when does the timer start? When does the timer pause, and when does the timer stop? In this case, the timer starts when an issue gets created, And it stops when either a comment is submitted for the customer, it enters the status waiting for customer, or the ticket gets resolved, right? And so those three things can go ahead and kick and stop this thing. Now, our goals can be determined by again, we come back to that, you can filter by any field in the instance. You can determine your goals based on any field in the instance. So in this case, ticket category incidents have a 2-hour goal. Basically, it means we're going to respond to you within 2 hours on this calendar. So our calendar that is relevant to is the 9 to 5. So it's going to be Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Okay, and that's whatever time zone this instance is based in, or your primary time zone. So if, say, they submit a ticket at 4:30, the SLA will not expire until 10:30 the next day. Okay, so that's how this one's set up. You can change your calendar. You can actually build custom calendars, and you can import company holidays. You can change the time zone for the calendars. You can do day-by-day calendars. Tons of options there for creating your custom calendars, and then you would select them down here. Now, if this is a service request, our time to first response is only 4 hours, or is up to 4 hours. That way, it's a less high priority ticket usually if it's a service request versus an incident, and we're just saying, hey, we're going to respond to you within 4 hours. All of the remaining issues, there's no target. Okay, so that's our time to first response, right? Which is usually the first SLA we work with. The second SLA that's most common is the time to resolution. And this SLA is focused on, okay, how long is it going to take us to complete this ticket for you? And this is the time we're committing to. And so in this case, we're committing to resolving the ticket. You'll notice the timer starts when an issue gets created or an issue gets reopened or a resolution gets cleared is what we call it. And it finishes counting when a resolution gets set. It's pretty simple. But basically for incidents, we're committing to 4 hours on a 9 to 5 calendar. But for a service request, we're committing to 8. And then of course, everything else, no target. And so these SLAs are a really simple way to track performance and basically evaluate your service desk. And so with these SLAs, and there's a couple more, time to close after resolution, we talked about that one. Once it's resolved, how long does it take to get put into the closed status? Usually that's reliant upon a response from the customer acknowledging the resolution or approving the resolution. And then a time to review normal change, okay? So we've got a few SLAs here. The best way to track performance on these SLAs is through reports. And reports are, in Jira, are focused on, a lot of them are focused on performance. And so if we go back out to our project on the agent side, we can go down here to knowledge and we'll see this reports section, okay? And so the first report, since we're talking about SLAs, I want to go ahead and look at the SLA reports. So the first report I want to talk about is SLA met versus breached. Okay, this is looking at all SLAs, and it's going to basically look at how many SLAs have been met on a specific day and how many were breached on a certain day. And so if we go back, let's say we go back past quarter by day, it's going to be a pretty dense amount of data. And since this is a demo instance, of course, there's not a lot of great, linear data, but you can see, times when we met SLAs versus, we didn't breach any, breached 4 on this day, we breached 30 today. And so you can see, normally this would be a lot prettier if you had real data for your team, but it allows you to track, okay, how often are we meeting SLAs? How often are we breaching SLAs? And it prompts you to do that investigation of, hey, why, right? Why are we breaching these SLAs? Is it the SLAs are unreasonable? Because that may be the case. Or is it just that our teams are overloaded or our process is terrible? Or we're requiring, maybe our SLAs are bad. A lot of times we'll talk to folks like, oh, our SLAs are always expiring. And they've got their SLAs counting while it's waiting for a customer. So that's actually an example in here. So if we go back to project settings and we look at our SLAs, specifically the time to resolution SLA, you'll notice it doesn't pause. Well, if we're in a status waiting for customer, we don't want the SLA to be counting down against our team, right? So if the customer takes a day to respond there goes our 8 hours, or especially our 4 hours, right? And so the important thing here is to make sure we pause the SLA. That's why we have this pause condition. And so in this case, we would add, we want to pause when it's in status waiting for customer, right? So if it's ever in that status, sitting there waiting for customer, it'll pause. And then we also have a status called pending, right? And pending is when we're waiting on another team for something. And again, we don't want our SLA counting against our team, right? We want to be supportive of our agents, and we want to support our team and make them successful. And counting SLAs against them that aren't their responsibility is not a good way to make them successful. So we want to make sure we're pausing those SLAs. And so now those SLAs will pause when it's not in the support member's hands, not in the agent's hands. So really important things to keep in mind to make your team more successful. If you still find that your SLAs are breaching, or you're constantly running out of time, or you're not meeting your goals, we have other tools to help us evaluate that. So the biggest ones are, if we go back to reports here, at the top of the list is a workload report. Now, we've got a bunch of consultants in here that do demos, and so obviously we're not seeing a ton of relevant data here, but on a real team, if you come in here and you see, your agents up at the top of this list have 30 tickets assigned to them that are in progress, something's wrong, right? Your workload is way too high. So either you've got tickets being submitted that shouldn't be submitted, or you need a bigger service management team. And so this allows you to very quickly gather that information and report on that information. So workload being the first. Another metric we can use to kind of gauge the success of our service desk is a satisfaction report. You can configure Jira Service Management to automatically spit out satisfaction reports. Looks like we haven't done any, but basically when a ticket gets resolved, it'll shoot an email out to the customer and prompt them to kind of give a 1 to 5 stars. And it allows you to kind of track your customer satisfaction, and it allows you to track it by agent as well as by service desk and request type, which is pretty useful. You can kind of break it down pretty specifically. Beyond that, we've got requests deflected. We talked a little bit about the knowledge base. And the most important thing with the knowledge base is to deflect tickets, right? So the goal here is somebody comes in to create a ticket. They get prompted in that little, pop-up when they start typing in the summary. It'll give them some suggested articles. If they click one of those articles and then say that it helped and they don't create a ticket, that's a deflected request. And so this is a great report to gauge the success of your knowledge base, right? And so if you have like 0 deflected requests and your team's overloaded, you might want to look into making better knowledge base articles, right? And populating your knowledge base so that the customers that come in can be routed there and be more successful. So you can see not only article views. So if you get tons of views, but people are still submitting tickets and you're not getting deflected tickets, then you need to revamp your articles. If you get lots of views and lots of deflections, then your articles are doing great. If you get no views, and of course, if you have no views, you have no deflections, you just need more articles, more relevant articles. So, and then obviously pulling your customers for that information is also really helpful. And then you can see just your resolved requests with a little bit of data of, was it resolved with an article? Those are going to be requests where I talked about that little share with customer button on the suggested articles. You can send that to the customer. If that resolves it, then it's resolved with an article. If not, it's resolved without an article. And then, of course, you've got your deflected requests out in the portal. The most important, arguably the most important number is this guy right here, because that takes the pressure off of your team as much as possible. So that's something that one of the biggest things we work with customers on during implementations is making sure their knowledge base is strong. And so this is a big one. All right. And now down below, we've got some other more basic reports. Created versus resolved. This is going to show over time, all the tickets that are created versus tickets getting resolved, and the rate at which, are we staying ahead? Are we falling behind? In this case, we're down 41, which means we have 41 open tickets right now. And that may be good for your service desk. In fact, I know some service desks where 40 is amazing. Usually have hundreds. And then I know some where 40 is huge because they only have one agent, right? So it totally varies by your team, but this is a really good report to keep track of. Time to resolution, which is basically gauging your SLA success. and it's averaging out. So if we go back a year, we can say, okay, our average time to resolution for all issues, we're averaging 25 hours. For incidents, we're averaging 44 hours. And beyond that, you could actually break this down by agent. You could say, which, be careful with that, because you don't want to put, you don't want to make people self-conscious, or, basically if you have somebody that's always handling the more difficult tickets, their average time to resolution is going to be higher. So be careful with using this metric of, oh, well, how long is it taking, so-and-so to resolve issues? That might be a false metric. So be careful with, you want to, when you see that, if you see somebody who seems to take much longer to complete tickets, you can click on the data point, jump down here, and actually see the tickets that they're resolving. So like here we've got, okay, Brian's got a bunch here. He's really, really quick, right? All of his are really short. And then you get down to Scott's tickets down here, and he's got 109, 106, 106, 107. That's crazy, right? What's taking him so long? Why are they difficult? If you open up the ticket and they're super simple and they're just being neglected, well, then you have a conversation. You say, hey, we need to have a little bit of performance review here. But if you open up the ticket and his tickets are like, such and such a server is down, and it took him, 2 days to order in a new server, get it all set up and fired up and replaced, well, that's actually pretty fast, right? And so you always want to use the data you're given. And the great thing about Jira's reporting here is that not only does it give you the nice, pretty overview graph, but if you click on any of these data points down below, you can see the specific issues that contributed to that data point, and you can evaluate each one on a case-by-case basis. So keep that in mind as well. Cool. And then below that, we got some more SLA reports. We've got some, we can gauge incidents based on priority. If we go back, I like to go back a year to see our month. In this, we'll go back a year by month, and we can see, okay, we have 26 low priority incidents, and we had no medium, high, or highest priority incidents. That's awesome. So that's a good thing. We have no highest priority incidents, which means nothing crazy has happened, right? Anyway, so some examples of reports there. On the project settings side, I want to talk about 2 more things. One is going to be, so within a given service management project, if you're familiar with Jira, you'll be familiar with this concept of issue types, right? And so, and you'll see over here, you see this little warning symbol. If you remember, I edited that SLA to add some pause metrics. And so it's actually recalculating these SLAs. So you'll see those for a little while it goes back and recalculates all the SLAs. So if we refresh enough times and we wait long enough, that'll all update to recalculate. But it's going back and it's re-indexing the entire database. So it takes us just a second. But if you're familiar with Jira, you'll know there's issue types, right? And each issue type has its own workflow. It usually denotes its own type of work in the instance. Well, Jira Service Management projects are no different. They also have issue types. And in this case, our issue types are service request, incident, problem, or change, right? Really high level. The issue type denotes the type of work. But beyond issue types, once we bring in Jira Service Management, we get another level, even more granular than issue type, which is request type. And so when we were out on the portal here, if you remember, we were seeing these big lists of request types, and each one of these request types is tied to one of those 4 issue types. So if there's a problem, if you see the word problem, it's tied to the incident issue type typically. If you see, a request that's more like a service request, like if I go to computers, request a new laptop, that's going to be tied to the service request issue type. Report broken hardware is going to be tied to the incident request type. Does that make sense? So making sure that your customers have a very logical place to go is why we have request types. And the goal with request types is to be as intuitive as possible. If you just put service request, incident, problem, change, and those were your request types, some people would understand that language. Many people would not. If you have experience with a customer-facing portal, you know that what's intuitive to the agents and intuitive to you as the implementer or the admin is not always intuitive to the customer. So we want to make sure we build out an intuitive service desk. And so in this case, our request types are all of these. And the way we get there is if we're in a service project like this, we go down at the bottom on the bottom left, and we go to project settings. And then under this, we go to request types. And this is where we can see all of the request types available in our particular instance. And so for this, our particular project, so in this IT service desk project, these are all of our available service requests. And then over here on the right, you can see portal groups. You can see which group these request types are in. And not only that, you can actually go into each of these request types, hit this little ellipses, and we can take a look, or we can actually click on the request type itself, so fix an account problem, and we can go to the request form. And from here, we can actually edit, the summary. We can look at, we can add additional fields in here. Anything that's currently on the create screen for this issue type can be added. So maybe we want to add out on the portal the ability to add components, or for the customer to set the priority, things like that. And you can edit that all here. We can add descriptions under the request form. A little prompt here: having troubles accessing certain websites or systems, will help you out. Give somebody some idea of what exactly this request is for, and that'll show up. If we go back to our logins and accounts, having trouble, that little prompt shows up in this little description right under the title, because we want to be really, really clear to the customer of what each request does. Because yeah, you guys get it. So be as intuitive as you can. We can add help and instructions, as well as links to like PDFs or things like that to help people fill out forms. If you have a form that's got 30 fields on it, and sometimes some of them are pretty complicated, it can be helpful to add some help text or a PDF document that's kind of like some form help, stuff like that. And you would do that right here. And then of course we can hide some fields and add some default values, stuff like that. But if we jump back here to the request types list, we can sort that by, this is showing all the service requests. See that at the top? Well, we also want to look at the incidents. So all of these request types are feeding one of those service request issue types. We have service request and service request with approvals. Some of these require an approval status. These request types, report a system problem and report broken hardware, are feeding our incident issue type. And then problems has an investigated problem, and then we have a change, which shows up on our server or application change request types or groups. Okay, so these are going to be where we create our additional request types. We can add new request types, and here we would type in what we want the name to be, select an icon, and then we have to select what issue type it creates. And the issue type, again, determines the fields available, and it determines the workflow for that particular request type that we're creating. Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, and then the last thing I want to talk about is, for today, is the knowledge base, and then we'll get to some questions. And so Confluence is a really important piece in the service management ecosystem. So Atlassian, if you're familiar with Confluence, Confluence is a content portal or content like documentation tool. And so it really is a strong hand-in-hand relationship between that and Jira Service Management, because that's what enables you to have your native integration for your knowledge base. And so when we talk about the knowledge base, we're talking about Confluence. We're talking about a specific type of space in Confluence connected to a Jira Service Management portal. So in this particular project, if we go down to this knowledge base section, it's going to take us over here, and it's going to show us all of the available articles in the Jira Service Management, or in the knowledge base space assigned to this Jira Service Management project. And that space is called IT Service Desk. It's named the same as our service desk. And we can see all the articles available in there. And we can see how often they're viewed, as well as when they were last updated. Okay. So as an agent, I can at a glance see if I've got some downtime or some time that I've dedicated to updating knowledge base articles, I can jump in here and go, wow, this one hasn't been updated for 9 months. I need to jump in here and just take a look and see if it's still accurate. It is really important for the health of your team and the health of your service desk to support your agents in taking the time to update these articles. I know it can seem like downtime, unused, non-useful time or burn time, but it actually will save them far more time than it takes to set these articles up in agents or in customers' deflected tickets. And what that looks like is if we're out in the portal here and I want to say I want to set up a VPN, and I say, okay, help me set up VPN to the office, or to work, and I'll see this article pop up that set up VPN to work from home. Oh, great, cool. Click on that article, and this article will be a step-by-step walkthrough. Obviously, it's just a demo article, so we didn't put anything in there, but it could give me a step-by-step walkthrough of how to set up a VPN, and I may never submit a ticket. And that's amazing. That's one less ticket for folks to be working. Because if you're setting a VPN and somebody doesn't know what they're doing and they submit a ticket, well, you're gonna have to walk them through every single step. If you don't have an article, a pre-created article to help them out with. And so they can come on here and say, yep, it was helpful. Boom, thanks, have a good day. Awesome, right? That's a deflected request, done, right? And you never get that request into your service desk. So articles are really important. Let me go ahead and jump back here. This is where I want to be. So these are our available articles right now. And then of course we got some drafts here. Now we could add some additional categories for articles and begin to categorize these up. We don't have any categories in here right now. And then we can also have, this is a feature that they just added to cloud not that long ago, and it was a huge deal, is the ability to have multiple knowledge-based spaces tied to a single Jira Service Management project. It used to be you can only have one knowledge-based space per project. Now you can have as many as you want, and that's fantastic because you may have in a single service desk, you may be providing support for multiple types of applications, and each one of those applications may have their own documentation space. And you could tie each of those spaces, all three of, maybe you have 3 applications you're supporting, you could tie all 3 of those applications to one service desk and do all your application support in one place. And it's really cool. So that's been awesome to leverage that with a lot of our customers to say, hey, now you can do it. And we've, helped them get set up with multiple knowledge bases. So that's a really cool feature that they rolled out. And so the way that we would edit the settings surrounding knowledge base is again in that project settings area, and then the knowledge base settings. And this is on the project admin side. You have to have project admin rights to see this screen. But what it allows you to do is it shows you all the currently linked spaces and how their viewing permissions are set up. We can add additional spaces. We could link a bunch of other spaces from our knowledge base space that's over on our Confluence instance. Below that, we can see all of our request forms. There's a couple pages of those. And it allows us to select whether or not articles are suggested. So if you have an account problem, right, you can't log in, well, maybe this is something where there's no article to help with that. So we can turn off suggestions. And now you won't see unhelpful articles. But for like get a guest Wi-Fi account or set up a VPN, we do have articles for those. So we want those to suggest those articles, right? Furthermore, we can actually filter down what types of articles are available. So for get guest Wi-Fi account, we want to filter by articles that have the Wi-Fi label attached to them. For VPN, we want to filter by articles that have the VPN label associated with them, et cetera, right? So we can begin to really divvy up and get really precise with which articles are suggested for which request types, which is pretty cool. So awesome. All right, so that kind of covers the main topics that I wanted to hit on today. I'm going to go ahead and shift over and look at some of the questions that you guys have submitted. So we've got a few coming through here. So let me go ahead and I'm going to jump up to the top level here, and then let's go ahead and pivot. All right, so first question we had is, all right, we're on data center. I'm having trouble finding the request type field to use for filtering in the queues. Can you tell me the name of the field when writing up the filter query? Yeah, so for data center and server, I believe it's actually called customer request type is actually how it's filtered. I don't have, let me see, actually I do have a playground site. Let me go ahead and confirm that while I'm thinking about it. That way you guys have a solid answer there. But that also may be something that you could find in the Atlassian community, a confirmation of that. But I'll go ahead and get an answer for that as quick as I can here while I'm thinking about it. Yeah, the key there is when you're building out a queue like this, we would go up to this edit queue menu, edit queue. And then in the filter, we would switch to JQL for this for customer request type. And then on cloud, like you said, it's actually pretty easy. It's just request type. Request type equals, and then we'll get all of our options here. We could do change request, things like that. For server, I'm going to go ahead and get you an answer here, just to make sure it's the same language. Let's see. Yeah, it's customer request type. That's correct. Cool. All right. I wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy. It is customer request type for that one. All right. On data center and our software development project users can see our Jira Service Management projects from the agent views as read-only. Yes. Yeah. So not realizing they should comment through the portal. We currently have a group with read-only access to the permission scheme of Jira Service Desk. How do I remove that group? Yeah, so the permission that allows users, let me go ahead and cancel this edit to the portal here. The permission that controls access to viewing a project is called the Browse Projects permission. And so it's pretty common to allow, Jira software users to have visibility into the tickets that exist in the Jira Service Management project without giving them edit rights or the ability to transition tickets. And so if we go into project settings and we go to permissions, which is down at the bottom left, once this loads up here, open up permissions. The browse project permission, this first one right here, is the one that determines whether or not folks can see into the ticket. And so whatever group it is, so if you look through these groups, this is the first place to evaluate and just say, okay, which one of these groups is giving those folks access? And then just what you would do is you go to those actions, edit permissions, and it'll allow you to actually remove that permission in the settings side. And so that's going to be universal for both cloud and data center. And so that's going to be how you're going to remove this browse projects permission is what's allowing them to view those tickets. And so you'll want to pull that. Make sure you don't remove this service project customer portal access permission. Make sure that's there. It's going to be some other permission or some other group that's allowing them access. We do recommend using project roles, not groups, to do permissioning. If you use a group, then that means the Jira admin has to control user access for each individual project. Whereas if you use a project role, then the project admin in this people section, or in your case on server, it would be users and roles. Then the project admin would have to is able to control who has access to their project and who doesn't. And that is a much more efficient way to manage users in a project. Cool. All right, data center, we can tie multiple knowledge bases to a service desk and vice versa. So yeah, so you can have a single knowledge base tied to multiple service desks, but on data center, I believe you still cannot have multiple knowledge bases tied to a single service desk. And so that's kind of one of those things that they were able to release on cloud, but I don't believe they've released as an update on server. However, I am checking right now. So I will let you know in just a couple seconds here. So yeah, I'll check that, but I believe you cannot tie multiple knowledge bases to a single service desk. So I got a knowledge bases here. That is correct. You can only tie one. So yeah, unfortunately, that's just a cloud feature, Wendy, not a data center, server data center feature. What do you suggest related to escalations? We have a few service desks where 4 are tier 1 and 1 is tier 2 support. Yeah, so escalations are a very customizable functionality. It's something where it's kind of up to you guys how you want to escalate. You can do escalations as just a queue and basically just have an additional queue out here in that queue section that's like an escalated tickets queue that a manager would maybe view or something like that. And that's all it does. Very, very simple. Just kind of bumps it up a level. Or you can actually, when a ticket gets escalated, you can actually have it create a duplicate ticket in a different project even if you wanted to, and you have a tier 1 support. But what I would recommend for tier 1 and tier 2 support, and this is a recommendation without having worked with your teams or seen your system, but typically what works well is a tier 1 queue and a tier 2 queue, and maybe even a tier 3 or a tier 4. And basically the ability to have, the customer, and in this case, it sounds like you may not want the customer to do the escalation. You may want to do an internal escalation, in which case you would just say, okay, we're not able to help this, at first contact, we're going to have to escalate this to tier 2. And you would actually potentially either run a transition that updates a custom field that you're using to filter your queues, or you could have a different status you could have a workflow that's got 2 paths. The happy path is through tier 1 to close. The unhappy path is up to tier 1, goes to tier 2, and then close, right? Where you have to escalate it to that tier 2 status, and maybe that status is what you use to filter your queues. I recommend the former, using a custom field to filter that out, and so that's usually the better way to do it is have a transition that updates a custom field that says this has been escalated. It's like a tier 2 escalation field, and then have your queue filter by that field. So, all right, I'm on JSM Cloud, and we want to have certain internal requests like service desk stock orders to be in a portal, but only be visible by certain people. Is there a way to do that? Yeah, so this is one of those requests we get a lot, and it's kind of surrounding basically doing permissioning or view permissioning based on individual requests. And that's unfortunately not really possible at this stage. So basically the way that Jira or Atlassian has chunked up their view permissioning is on a project by project basis. So typically what we'd recommend is if you've got, if you've got some requests you want one group to see and some requests you want another group to see, I would put them in 2 separate service desks actually, and have those roll up into 2 different service desks, 2 different permission groups. That way you actually silo your customers into a single service desk where all of their requests are located that they can view. And I know that's not always the best answer for folks, or not always the preferable answer for folks, but it is the way the tool is kind of set up for permissioning, is the permissioning is done at the project level, not at the request type level. Now, there are actually feature requests out there to Atlassian asking them to add that functionality. And so that may come in the future. I believe it's still in the gathering interest status. But you can look up that feature request on their Jira Service Management instance and actually track that request if you're interested. So, but I believe it's out there, and it'd be cool if they released that. But honestly, I would, even if they did release that functionality, I think it would, and the reason they probably haven't is because it would cause more problems than it would fix. So, yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you guys. We are running up on the end of the hour here, so thank you for joining. It was really, really fun talking to you guys and answering some of your questions. Hopefully that was helpful. And if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. And I'm going to throw in the chat an email, the team at expium.com email. If you guys have questions, or you want support, or maybe you need help with an implementation or licensing or other questions like that, please feel free to reach out to us at that team at expium.com email. We'd be happy to help you answer any of your questions. And without further ado, have a great day. Hopefully we'll see you guys next week.